Hello everyone, and welcome to One Control Port Podcast, episode 248. I'm Benjamin Yoder, here today, talking about video games. We got a pretty packed episode this week, actually. First and foremost, I went to LvlUpExpo over the weekend, and did my panel that I said I was going to. And that panel is actually up and live now, so you can go watch that on the YouTube channel if you want to. Definitely some things I think could have been better about it, but if you hadn't been listening recently, there were a lot of things kind of up in the air with my life, and we're still kind of coming down on that stuff and normalizing out a bit. But I didn't really get nearly as much time as I wanted to work on the panel. Same thing with the Sin City one as well. So it's kind of, back to that Sin City thing of like, I'm happy with it given the effort I was able to put into it. If I could put more effort into it, I definitely would. And unfortunately, just didn't quite work out in this situation. So as far as I'm aware, the next panel that I could potentially do here locally would be Sin City again, which is at the end of the year. I went and looked at the convention schedule, and I didn't see anything really scheduled other than Evo. Evo is planned for this year, and I don't believe they take any kind of panels. I think they're way too big for something like that. So we'll see. I would like to do more panels, and I do have the potential of maybe going somewhere else to do panels as well, like go to different conventions. I kind of wanted to do a little bit more like traveling to different places, and game conventions are a great excuse to do that. I've considered going to Midwest Gaming Classic because I have not gone there yet for that. Not that I could do a panel there, but maybe travel a little more, and then depending on the size of the convention I end up going to, be able to submit something. But we'll see. I just finished that last one, so I'm not quite ready to go straight into planning the next one. And I also got to kind of figure out what would be a good topic, because I don't really want to just repeat the same topics I've already done typically. It would be nice to kind of clean them up a little bit and maybe represent them a bit cleaner, but at the same time I'm kind of like, it's a panel. It's only going to be so clean when you're talking on the fly and can't edit anything or anything like that. So yeah, but I had a lot of fun with that. Otherwise, pretty typical for a convention. I went to LvlUpExpo in 2017, and back then there was very, very, very few video games at the actual event, despite being a video game convention. Things have definitely improved in the last 4 or 5 years. I would not say that they are significantly improved. It still feels more like an anime convention more than a video game convention, but it feels like more of a video game convention than any other convention I've been to in Las Vegas since GameStop Expo, when that last happened. I think 2017 was the last year GameStop Expo may have happened. Maybe it was 2016. I can't remember. It was whatever year I think Sonic Forces was coming out, because I remember playing the Sonic Forces demo there. I think it was 2017. Anyways, all that aside, though, so it was pretty nice. I went and talked to some indie devs. A handful of them seemed to be local. Some came in from, I think, Portland, Seattle-ish area, and I believe another one from Texas kind of thing. But there were a handful of local ones. They did have some demos you could download from the Steam page, and I might stream those a little bit, just because I need to do some testing for streaming stuff, and it might be a good opportunity to just download those and just play those on stream for a little bit, and just check those out. So maybe I'll do that. Have a good time, so you can see a couple of the games that I saw when I was there. So that's coming up. But yeah, I would say overall it was a good experience. Is LvlUpExpo you need to fly into town to see? I don't really think so at this point. At least as somebody who likes video games, it seemed very packed with anime voice actors and all those things. So I think that's pretty standard for conventions generally. But I think I do really want something to be more video gamey here locally. I think that is something I personally would like. I probably should go to Evo at some point. I'm not a big fighting game person, so in my mind, it's always been kind of well, do I really belong there? Will I really have a great time? But I really should go just to at least check it out. I believe there is a general convention that kind of exists around Evo, so it's not just the fighting game tournament stuff. I can look at Street Fighter and go yep, those guys are punching each other, but I'm not somebody who can really appreciate fighting games things. I like playing fighting games, but it's just not something I can sit there and think a lot about in terms of here's a professional playing versus a normal person playing, outside of, well, this guy hits the guy a lot more. most of the time. So yeah. So Level Up Expo is pretty fun. Again, panels on the website or on the YouTube channel if you want to go check that out. I did a topic that was playing Japanese games without knowing the language. So that was it was pretty fun. It was a fun little topic to do. So I think if I'm going to do anything next for panel stuff, I think my biggest desires would be maybe games for girls, maybe something more related to like Nintendo racing games. And then Mr. T suggested on the stream Dojin games. And that might be an interesting topic, although I don't quite know what I would say about Dojin games, so I'd have to think a lot about that. Other than just be like, hey, Dojin games are pretty cool. I know some. Let me tell you about them, kind of thing. So yeah. I did play some like normal video games. There were some things at the actual arcade there. There's like an arcade section. I didn't spend a lot of time there, unfortunately, though. But I did play some normal video games. I had a friend in town, so we sat down and played through Curse of the Moon 2. I really wanted to try that game co-op, and we played through the majority of it. I'm kind of surprised. It's actually, if you don't know, the original Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, you have to play through it at least twice to get the real ending. Really, there's like probably about 4 or 5 total endings that you can get. I think 4 is the number, if I remember, but I can't remember for sure. And, each like ending you did kind of had different play styles as you were playing through it. There's 2 that were fairly similar, but the rest all kind of played out in their own different ways. And this game kind of does the same thing in some ways. It basically, has you kind of going through these levels as just kind of like the core crew initially, and then it does something very similar to the last game where they take one character away and you have to go through the game again with a reduced cast. And then they actually, in the third playthrough, like introduce the old cast back in. So you have an even larger set of characters to play with. However, you have to individually earn them back. So you have to actually go find them and add them to your party. So you actually are, most of the time that playthrough, working with less characters than you would typically have. So it's a pretty neat setup that they do there with that. And I'm glad it is a little different. It just feels a little grindy maybe. But the cool thing with Curse of the Moon is that there are different like directions on the or directions you can go through the level. So like depending on which characters you have with you, you can go down different paths that can take you to new places that you can go through and explore, find power-ups and things like that. So there's a lot of reason to explore in that game. And Curse of the Moon, 1 is amazing. I think Curse of the Moon 2 is like in a lot of ways kind of more the same. But I think they do a really good job of tweaking a lot of little things here and there to make it feel different. And playing it co-op specifically, I think, was a big help, because even though it's probably a little more challenging due to the fact that like you both can burn your resources simultaneously. Like, if 2 people take damage at once from a single attack, that's going to do double the damage to your entire pool of resources of characters. Because you don't like have your own set of characters. You still share the same pool of characters. The only difference is that the main character Zengetsu, you get a second one of him. So you have 2 Zengetsus, a red one and a blue one. So you do get an extra character in there. But, for the potential amount of damage like you can take from like a boss's single attack or something, that is higher. But at the same time, you also get higher damage output, right? So it definitely can be, I think, as kind of a trade-off. But it was fun, and you kind of have some new Super Mario kind of elements to it, where like you and the other player have like collision with each other. So you can like sit on top of them and have them carry you around. You can also do essentially the equivalent of like the new Super Mario Brothers bubble, where you turn into like a little symbol and float around the other player, and then pop yourself back out whenever you want to, kind of thing. So it's very convenient in that regard, and plays fairly well. The one problem I think, and I'm sure this is potentially intentional, but I think would have maybe made the game a little better if they changed it, is when you switch characters in Curse of the Moon 1 and Curse of the Moon 2, the game like flashes for a second and like pauses the action. And while that's fine when you're playing alone, actually it's honestly kind of beneficial, because you can sit there and like spam it in the air or something like when you're falling. And when you're spamming it, the game doesn't really progress that much. So you can just sit there and cycle through characters like nonstop and kind of like freeze the game. But when you're playing in multiplayer, if like somebody's trying to do platforming, the other character's like, or the player is like, I need to change to another character, and you change, it like freezes the other player's screen or movement as well. So it creates situations where you end up messing with somebody else's platforming and killing them. And obviously just you need to be better at coordinating and make sure you're not doing that while someone else is platforming. But I'm not particularly observant when those comes to those kind of things. So it was not too uncommon for me to accidentally accidentally kill my partner while I was going through it. So anyways, Curse of the Moon 2 is still really great. I might go through and finish it up on my own, but I had another friend who was actually interested in playing, and we were kind of holding off because it's local multiplayer only. And local multiplayer is not great for me because the only person I know of my local town is my dad, and my dad's probably not going to play Curse of the Moon 2 with me. I mean, I'm sure if I asked him, he would. But I think that might be a little bit of an intense experience for him in a lot of ways. So, yeah, but Curse of the Moon 2 only supports local, so you can't really play online. So, I was thinking about maybe trying through Parsec on PC or something like that and finishing it up that way with a friend who also likes Curse of the Moon 1. So we'll see, but I think I will try to finish it up on my own. Speaking of finishing up, technically, we kind of finished up God Eater 3, but there's still more to do. So God Eater 3 had some downloadable quests. We went and finished those downloadable quests, and we got the credits or whatever. It was fine. It was it basically was just resolving a story point with one particular character that kind of felt left out from the rest of the game. And I think it's probably one of the better stories in the game. I feel like God Eater 3 has a problem where a lot of the characters don't really feel like they matter. And so you're just kind of okay, well, I went through this story thing, but I don't know, this character doesn't really have any personality or involvement to what's happening. So it just doesn't really feel like any of the characters matter that much in that game. And so this story focused on the three brothers, Keith, I forget the other guy's name, Keith, Zeke, and then Neil, I think are the three names. And I think the story between them was fairly decently told. Was it anything amazing? No, but it's fairly decent. However, each character does have character episodes, which is not a particular God Eater 3 specific thing. God Eater 2 also had character episodes as well. And the problem is that the character episodes, like God Eater 2, are single player only. And so how you play those is you have to grind out a relationship with the character, and you have to then do a series of quests with them. But instead of spreading it out over the course of the game or something like that, they dump them all on the player at once. And as far as I can tell, you can't build that relationship. You might be able to build it in multiplayer, actually, thinking about it. But either way, you have to do the actual quest content single player. So at this point, basically, there's no multiplayer quest content for story. It's all single player stuff. So basically, I got to sit down and just grind through a bunch of relationship stuff to go and unlock the character stories for some of these characters. So, not particularly ideal. Honestly, I've been done with God Eater 3 since probably about halfway through the game and just being I don't really want to play this anymore. I did want to beat it. I knew that much, but I just don't really want to play it anymore. And so to get to the end of the game and then it'd be okay, you have another freaking 20 plus story quests with all these characters, and you also have to grind out the relationships for every single character, and we gated off so you can only grind out relationships with one initially, then you can grind out with 3 after that. It's just oh my god. I want this game to go away. So, I don't know. It is in my PS4 still. I will probably sit down and try to grind through it. I just got to find the time and figure out if it's worth my time and how long it's going to take, kind of thing. So, we'll see. If it's really a slow trudge, I'm not going to die over it. I'm just going to, work my way through it and or just leave it there. Maybe go look up stuff on YouTube or something like that afterwards. So, yes. And then I played a little bit of First Soldier as well, just in Season 2. I think we might be done with First Soldier for now. The Season 2 is good and everything. And I played Dragoon, and Dragoon's a fun class. But I kind of feel like I've seen everything with First Soldier, and the person I was playing with had a lot of technical issues as well with the game, beyond the technical issues that, I was having with the game, just down to their phone not performing well. And at this point, the only thing I really want to do in First Soldier is maybe play competitively. So unless I can do that 3v3 kind of setup or something, I think at this point I'm probably just not super interested anymore. My friend did said he wanted to go play some Apex, which I'm kind of slightly interested in going back to and checking out, but I just don't feel like I have a lot of enthusiasm to go back and play Apex right now. So we'll see how that goes. But I might play, at least a couple times just to try out some of the new characters for that. So we'll see. But yeah, First Soldier, the new patch seems pretty cool. Teleport seems okay, but not super useful given there's already so many movement options in that game. So dropping teleports down is kind of helpful, but there's some map changes as well. But they were pretty minor changes, but they were very helpful changes, I will say. So yes. And then also, just been streaming Evergrace. And I don't really have anything to say more about Evergrace at this point, but I am a little worried because if you don't know, at the end of the streams we do community reviews. And so we talk about a game and how we feel about it and do a little review card. I'm having a really, really hard time putting a finger down on like what I like about Evergrace, and I'm really worried that I'm not going to figure that out by the time we do the community reviews. So I've been thinking about just spending some time maybe writing out some thoughts about Evergrace just to see if I can kind of massage that a little more rather than, sit there live on stream and just be like, I don't know what makes this game all right, but I do want to like maybe sit there and figure out some thoughts on it before I do that, but been having fun with that. We finished up Darius's mode, which is like the main guy, and then we also have Charlene, and I'm playing through her mode right now. I feel like I've had a lot more trouble with Charlene's playthrough. I don't know if that's intentional, if it's like she's specifically considered to be a harder character or something, or if it's just like the nature of the level design just makes it feel harder. But she does get like a ranged weapon with the bow, and I do like the bow a lot. But most of the enemies she encounters, I feel like guard a lot. So like I feel like I've had to run up and use like piercing weapons instead, as like an alternative to the bow. So I don't know, but it's been fun, having a good time with that, enjoying that game a lot more than I thought I would originally. So yeah. So that's pretty much it in terms of stuff I've been playing. Like I said, quite a bit actually. So as I mentioned before, we are I'm looking to kind of like kick the YouTube back into gear again. We've been kind of in hibernation for a while, and even before that hibernation, I had a lot of problems getting content out through the end of the year last year, and a lot of things I was planning to put out in like September still are not done. So I am working to try to figure out, what I want to unclog from that, and also what I want to set aside if like maybe it's not important enough to get into kind of thing. But I'm basically looking at it from three perspectives, and I went ahead and did like a full breakdown of this on Patreon essentially. But I think I'm basically looking at tackling this stuff in like three different ways, or maybe three with the different time spans. One is stuff in like kind of the immediate future. And one of these things I already kind of did, the Patreon, I went ahead and updated the Patreon. So now the $10 level is flattened down to just the $5. So everything with bonus content is $5. And then you have the podcast question that we'll bring up here in a little bit. That's at the $3 level. And then that's also like a general support level. I removed the stream voting stuff because the people who are subscribed to the Patreon right now do not watch the stream as far as I'm aware. And it felt weird to offer like stream voting and stuff to people who weren't going to engage with it. And then also, it feels a little unfair to people who are watching the stream if people that aren't watching the stream are dictating what we're playing kind of thing, right? So until like there's a change in the type of people in the Patreon, and we have people who are more likely to be watching the stream, I think I'll put that one on hold until then. And then once we have people who also watch the stream in the Patreon, then I'll start looking at, reintroducing the stream game suggestions or polling where they can choose the game kind of thing. So Patreon stuff, that is pretty much all up to date. There are some content changes I have to do. Basically with my new job, I don't commute anymore. So Car Talk's probably going to be dead for the most part. And I have some ideas for the types of content I want to do on Patreon in addition to the article readings, but I have to like actually finalize some stuff and do some more testing, to get those rolling and moving kind of thing. So, and once I'm done with that, I think I'll also, go and promote the video on YouTube, or promote the Patreon on YouTube once I get like a general content flow worked out. So hopefully, this is the month of March. Hopefully by the end of March, I have some kind of like short video for Patreon. So none of that's really content unless you're at the Patreon though. In terms of like actual content I want to do, in the very short term, I want to try to get a Pokemon channel casual review, out. I haven't really drafted out the outline for that yet. It being a casual review, it is me just kind of talking, so it's not like some scripted thing, but I still do have an outline that I follow just to kind of make sure I hit all the stuff in kind of the order I want to hit it in. So that is something that I want to get out sooner rather than later. If I can, I'll work on that tomorrow. This is right now, it's Saturday night right now at the moment. So And then also, I want to catch up on the community review archive stuff. So if you don't know, we're a couple games behind on the community review archive. So I want to go ahead and catch that up. So Sword of Eteria is going to be coming out this week. So if you want to check out that archive for that community review, that will be going up on, I think it's Wednesday this week. And then I also went ahead and finished out the Parasite Eve one, and that's going to be happening, I think, on the 23rd right now. So those dates might shift depending on what kind of content comes out when. But I wanted to go ahead and get those caught up, and then, when Evergrace comes out, we can go ahead and put that up as soon as we can. I would like to get those community reviews up, within a reasonable time frame of when we finish streaming a game. So I'm crossing my fingers that, it will make sense where I can kind of plop it in the next week after we finish the game. But honestly, anytime I kind of set those kind of standards for myself, it kind of creates, timeline problems. So we'll see how I end up handling that. So anyways, so those are kind of like the immediate future plans. So that's like stuff that I plan to do basically as soon as possible. Short-term plans, Nintendo G video absolutely needs to get done. I want that thing out of my life. I want it to be done by the beginning of February. Did not happen. So, as soon as these more immediate issues I want to resolve or have resolved are out of the way, Nintendo G video, 100% what I want to do. From there, I got to look at some more short-term content like the Shenmue Multi-Tap podcast. I need to go ahead and set that up. Have somebody who already agreed to do that with me. I just have to kind of coordinate a time with them. I also got to figure out, we're going to try like doing video as well. So it's going to record my face and their face. And that will hopefully help me not have to edit nearly as much video into those. Because a lot of the problem right now with the Multi-Tap podcast is I have to edit a bunch of gameplay in. Not because I have to per se, but I think it makes the YouTube version more interesting. And a lot of times what we're talking about are things that people don't know much about. So having the gameplay in there, I think is very helpful. Thankfully, I think Shenmue is pretty straightforward. So I don't think I need to really add gameplay in there. And by straightforward, I say, I think people know what Shenmue is. So I think I'll be pretty light on any kind of editing in there. I also don't have just an archive of Shenmue footage, unfortunately. Outside of Shenmue 3, I have a bunch of Shenmue 3 recorded. But Shenmue 1 and 2, I don't have anything really recorded for that, unfortunately. So, and then also at the Nintendo G video, I want to do a Chibi Robo follow-up video. That is pretty much, I believe, scripted and done. I have not looked at it in a while, but I believe the script is basically complete. And I think it's going to be really straightforward. It's probably going to be a pretty short video. Kind of my main goal with that Chibi Robo video, beyond just saying what I want to say in it, is also kind of push people back to the Nintendo G video. I really want to, kind of expose Nintendo G to as many people as possible. And I'd also like to get back to doing something on the PCFX. There are some really probably low-hanging fruit for PCFX that I can do. I know there's not a lot of resources out there about burning PCFX games, so I think there'd be a pretty decent video to just talk about what I do for that specifically, which is actually somebody who listened to the podcast kind of gave me a lot of suggestions, so I'd probably be sourcing them mainly. But everything they suggested to me seems to work great, so... I also want to kind of finish up the English guide for Sparkling Feather. That kind of got put on hold because I wanted to rethink how I handled the English guide videos. And I think I kind of have a vision of how I want to go forward with them. And I think what I want to do, and this kind of came out of the Nintendo G video, is offer more resources that I create for people. Obviously that's not ideal. I'm not somebody who knows Japanese, right? But if there's something I identify that's I can provide this and it provides a function, like in the case of Nintendo G, I have an item guide and you can use that item guide as a way to utilize your inventory to its fullest extent in Nintendo G. That is something I can really help people with. I can't translate the game or offer any insight on the story really, but at the very least I can say, here's what these items are, here's kind of what they do, and let the player kind of sort between them to figure out what it is. So, and also, with Sparkling Feather, I want to do something similar to that, although not nearly as in depth as Nintendo G. And then also, I might do a more low-hanging fruit English guide video with do-do-dee-da-do-da. That game is probably going to be pretty straightforward to do an English guide for, I think. So yeah, it's been I think the Ojo-sama Sasomu video is October, so it's been a while. So maybe even before that, might be September. So, we really need to get something out for that. Not that those videos did amazingly well, but I care about the PCFX. I will say though, there's been a lot of great content coming out about the PCFX recently though. If you didn't look it up, let me find them real quick. If you haven't seen it yet, Amelie Dory is what their name is on Twitter. I think they're also Null Speed or something like that. but or it's not on Twitter, on YouTube is AMELIE. I mean, I'll put a link in the description, but they've been doing some like PC Engine videos, and they also did a Welcome to Pia Carrot video for the PCFX, and it seems like they have a lot of interest in doing more PCFX stuff, so definitely keep an eye on them. Speedy Null, I think is maybe the other name they have. And then obviously Video Game Esoterica has their stuff. I feel like there was somebody else doing PCFX stuff too recently, but I can't quite remember who, honestly. So anyways, I think there's a lot of like life in the PCFX community right now, which actually feels pretty cool. I mean, admittedly, I will say I have not been in the PCFX community like super long, so maybe it's always lively, but I feel like right now, at least in terms of video content, it's been a very lively period in the PCFX's life in that regard. So but yeah, I think there's still a lot of like value in doing the English guide videos. Just they're not gonna really get the views, I think. So yes. And then yeah, so that's it for the PCFX stuff, and that's more of the short-term plan stuff. Long-term plans, a few different things I want to do here. Again, like I want to stress that like these plans change, my interests change all the dang time. It's a big like problem for this YouTube channel. I'm like always running off to go look at something else. I'm like, oh, I have this great idea, I'm going to do it. And then I go and do that instead of what I was planning on doing. But here's some long-term plan goals I have. I want to do something in regards to Final Fantasy XI still. I was talking to someone about this a while ago, and I had some ideas, but I think I have reconsidered a lot of how I want to handle that. Initially, the thought was maybe doing like a podcast series on Final Fantasy XI, but the longer I thought about it, the more I was like, I don't know how much value I bring to like a podcast series about Final Fantasy XI. I think I would be way too much dead weight to really be involved in that long term. So, and also I have to think about like the audience I want to reach, right? Like if I want to reach somebody who doesn't know much about Final Fantasy XI, like an hour to 2 hour long podcast is maybe not the best format to do so. So still need to think about that, but I do want to do something with Final Fantasy XI. I also have like some ideas that have been floating around for FF11 for a long time. There's been some cut content stuff that I've been wanting to look into. Some being a lot more straightforward. Other ones requiring me to do some pretty significant hacking if I want to do like a formal video on. But there are things that I really want to cover in terms of Final Fantasy XI. It's just a matter of finding where that fits in. Kind of speaking of Final Fantasy, I do want to revisit the idea of doing like a Dirge of Cerberus multiplayer video as well. I was talking to someone about this a while ago, and I think there's a really good video there in terms of like the story that can be told about what that game was and kind of the interesting ideas behind it. But the biggest problem with that is that Dirge of Cerberus multiplayer does not exist anymore. And it was from a time that there was very little gameplay footage being recorded of games. So there is gameplay footage out there and you can find it. However, the majority of it is pretty old and pretty low quality. So figuring out, how do you represent that in a video format for however long that video would be, ideally about 10 minutes, and then not like spend a lot of time just looping footage or something like that, right? And if we could get, ways to pull, I know like some of the character models and stuff still exist in the international version of Dirge of Cerberus as well. In the US. So there may be ways to get some higher quality footage of certain aspects of the multiplayer if it was like left over on the game's disc and things like that. So I want to look into that as well. Those are more long-term, like I said. And then also I did a poll a while ago about like general collection videos. It was not 100% like 50-50, but it was like 45-ish% or something like that said they want to see like my entire collection in one video. And then there's another like 40% that said they want to see things broken out by console. So I think I might do both of those things. They will probably be less formal content and more just like kind of just chatting kind of content. So I think there is value for me to do that. And I think the actual workload should be fairly light. I would love to include gameplay for every single one of those games in those videos, but if I'm going through an entire collection of a game console library, I'm not going to have gameplay of every single one, unfortunately. That works for Metal Jesus Rocks, who's doing this for a living. Does not work for me, who has like 8,000 other things that I do on this YouTube channel, right? And in addition to my main job and everything. So I would love to show gameplay, and if I can, I might plug some gameplay in, but generally it'll probably be just a general chat around each individual game kind of thing. So yeah, and then I also, if I can, I want to do a Buddy Mission Bond video. We'll see how that turns out, though. I got to beat the game first, and then I'll figure out my feelings and how I want to talk about it after that. So that is kind of the upcoming plans for that. I know it's kind of a lot, but I just want to kind of walk you guys through what I was thinking. Again, that's just probably going to change to some degree, but that is my general thought of how I want to move forward. Immediate future stuff I want to get done this month. Short-term future stuff I want to get like done maybe the next like 2 to 3 months, and then long-term is, looking at, the second half of this year probably at this point. So, yes. Speaking of Patreon stuff though, it's time. It's time for the Patreon question. You're like, what is the Patreon question? Well, the Patreon question is when I post on the Patreon, asking for people for asking me questions. Those kind of people are people who are Patreons, like Discreet. Again, I don't think that's really somebody's name. I think that's just saying they want to hide their identity. So thank you, Discreet. That also includes Paul Daniel and also Jillian. So Jillian is also a new Patreon person, so welcome, Jillian, for that. However, we did not have any questions asked this week, although I think Paul did share his thoughts on the question this week. So if you don't know, since we don't have a Patreon question this week, we are getting a question from LvlSkip. They have like a series of questions that are like, hey, questions to ask a gamer kind of thing. And some of them are bad, some of them are good. This week's was actually pretty good, although maybe a little straightforward. Basically, the question was just... what your favorite console is, or in your opinion, what is the best game console? Oh, this actually changes this question. I did not think about this. In your opinion, what is the best games console? And if you don't know this channel, I actually make a very strong distinction between the best something versus my favorite. So I did not realize that this was a distinction that was being made here that I did not catch. But Paul Daniel basically said, if you don't know, Paul loves the PCFX and 3DO, says he loves those. But he also thinks that the Wii is like probably the most well-rounded console, which, as a fan of the Wii, I'm totally on board with. But basically says very, very wide age range and for demographics, and doesn't look too dated. Also, he says there's some really great rail shooters on there. Hey, the Wii is my favorite console, if you didn't know. I love the Wii, so I'm all in agreement with Paul Daniel here. I think one of the great things about the Wii is it really put developers who are not Nintendo in a very uncomfortable spot of like, hey, we have to use this controller for something. And so it made a lot of situations where a lot of companies kind of had to think like Nintendo in a lot of ways when creating their game. So, maybe not the best formula for creating good video games, but I think it was a good formula for creating interesting games. And because, indie games were not really a thing at the time, like Xbox Live Arcade was just starting to become a thing. Cave Story was more of like a weird PC niche thing rather than like something that was like well known or something like that, right? The Wii was like a safe haven for smaller developers to make games that are more of that like PS2 era style quality and things like that when game budgets were, inflating during the 360 and PS3 era. So the Wii is probably my favorite console. However, like I said, I didn't think about the best console because I don't know if I would say the Wii is the best console. Let me think about this a little bit. So I did some thinking about this, and it might be like a cop-out answer. I went and did some chores while I was thinking about it. Might be kind of a cop-out answer, but, I think if we're talking about the best console right now, I'd say probably the Xbox One, honestly. I was just thinking about, not only the sheer number of, indie games and things like that available for it, and, modern games and things like that, but also it has a pretty substantial backwards compatibility library there. And, without too much effort, you can also set up an emulator on it kind of thing, that you don't require any kind of hacking. It just basically is just setting your Xbox up in dev mode. It gives you a pretty great access to a variety of things. Even without that emulator mode though, just the fact that it has backwards compatibility, it has, all the, typical mainstream AAA stuff. I think that it is maybe enough to kind of put it at a kind of best console ever kind of thing. I think it's maybe a little bit of a boring answer, but that's where kind of favorite answer comes into play, and I say the Wii, right? With Xbox, when I think of the best console, that's what I think of. However, right now, I could be wrong. I think it's still a situation that if you don't have an internet connection with an Xbox One, you cannot, play or at least like authenticate games and things like that. So, will it be the best console in the future? Probably not, unless you count like hacking it and everything. At that point, being able to play whatever on it would probably be fine. But it's a little bit of a boring answer, I feel like. But the fact that it does have that kind of look into the past and the variety of things coming out today, and the access to the entire Xbox One library as well. I think I said Xbox One earlier. I meant Xbox Series X is probably the best thing at the moment that I can think of. So anyways, a little bit of a boring answer, but that's kind of why I think the best is always kind of a boring thing to talk about, because typically we talk about the best just means like the best made thing. And that, usually is just kind of the most modern iteration of something. That's not always true, but it usually frequently is. Castlevania Area of Sorrow, great example of best, despite it, being followed up by a variety of games, I feel like. So, in my opinion, at least, for Castlevania series. We talked about that last week. If you didn't see it last week, we did a Castlevania ranking of series. So, anyways, that's the Patreon question for this last week. Like I said earlier, you can do Patreon questions if you subscribe at a $3 level. If you do the $5 level, you can also do a Patreon question as well. I just do a post up on Monday in the afternoon, so just go ahead and leave a question there. But otherwise, as I mentioned earlier, the level 5 Patreon has bonus content at it. So if you want to check out some bonus content, behind the scenes stuff, article readings where I read through old articles I do, variety of commentary things like that. And there may be some content in the future that I do that's somewhat heavily edited for the actual main YouTube, but maybe you'll get like the raw, files for with the Patreon kind of thing. So anyways, that's it for that. Thank you so much again for everybody who subscribed to the Patreon. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate your support for that. That is paying for this month a Discord Nitro bump that I tried to see if that would improve the community meetups that we do on Saturday quality wise for the stream. However, it seems like the level 1 boost does not really do all that much, unfortunately. So we'll see how much it really matters. I might remove the boost at some point if it doesn't really do us any benefit. You have to have like a level 2 to get like 1080p 60 streaming or whatever, and I think in the end that costs like if you do it if you fund it yourself, I think it costs like $100 something or something like that a month, and I'm just like, there's no way I'm doing that right now. Maybe if the Patreon gets high enough, I can dedicate that money towards the Nitro boost or whatever. So anyways, I have some game news I want to talk about, or maybe not so much news as much as just games I want to talk about real quick that I was looking at. One that I actually was kind of looking at off and on for a while and just didn't really know what it was. It's called Pokepia. And I still don't really know what it is, but it's like a little 3D avatar world kind of game where you have this little cute character and you almost live on this little, I guess you could call it like planet-looking diorama, like almost like a dollhouse, but like it's open up like a planet kind of thing. So you can kind of walk around this like cake layer. I'm using a bunch of references, but like there's like little like layers to the house, and you can see through all the walls, and you can just kind of like go and it looks like you can kind of like decorate some of the houses and stuff, put plants in there. You can dress up your character. But when it comes to the gameplay aspect of the game, there doesn't really seem to be all that much. You can dress up your character, as I mentioned earlier, but you kind of just go and visit other friends' houses. I think it's when they're not there, it's just like their character standing there or whatever. But you can go and like water their plants and stuff, which seems like it contributes to the growth of certain plants and things like that. So there is some kind of like little like social connection aspect to the game of having characters go around and water plants for each other, I think. Again, I don't know for sure on these things, just looking at the game. However, they also, when I was looking through the article, I believe on 4Gamer, there was mention that it allows you to like voice chat through the game as well. So if you want to visit somebody's house and they're there, you can have like a little voice chat, and they show like 8 people just hanging out at one planet essentially. So if you want to use this as a way to replace your Skype calls or whatever, or Discord calls, Skype, man, your Discord like group or whatever, you can do that, look cute while you do it, kind of thing. I was always confused because when I went to the website for Pokepia, it always redirected me to something called Pokecolo, or Pokecolo, but the website URL says Poke like Colo with an L. And I did not look into that game much, but I did not like the visual style of that game at all. But it seems like maybe kind of a similar, just kind of like dress up, socialized thing, but it's all like 2D assets. And the characters just kind of remind me a little bit of like, I don't know how to put it, like little trolls almost, like the maybe the Cabbage Patch Kids kind of thing. Just like the faces themselves just look a little off to me. Not a huge fan of like that Western style of of cute character designs, I will say, which is probably why like I don't really look at most of the American Imagine games, but I will look at the Japanese ones typically. So it doesn't look particularly amazing, but you know, I'm not interested in that game. I'm only interested in the Pokepia game that comes out afterwards. So I don't think it's out yet. I think they are just kind of doing like a registered user campaign, and you can just kind of like register yourselves to it. I don't know if you have like a beta that you can sign into or anything like that, but looked pretty cute. I also saw there's like a Digimon Survive stream that happened, or just like a general Digimon stream that happened, but they talked about Digimon Survive. Yet again, this is a game that's still not out. It was announced, I think, in like 2018. It's been a while since they've announced this game. Really great looking art style, and I love the look of the world of the game. But during that event, they basically said, hey, the reason why this has been delayed so long recently, or we haven't provided any updates recently, is due to... basically, they said that they were changing developers. So they switched off from, I believe the company's called Witchcraft, who worked on the Idle Death game kind of thing. And switched over to another developer called Hyde, which does like a bunch of support work for a lot of the games, but it seems like they were the main developer on a title called Root Letter, which we have talked about on this podcast a while before. So switching companies around, I hadn't heard of either company before, to be honest with you, outside of I did know what Idle Death game was. I own a copy of Idle Death game for the Vita. We actually streamed it fairly recently, actually, when I was testing out my hacked PS Vita. But yeah, so anyways, game still looks like really nice visually, but it more or less just looks like a straightforward strategy RPG, and kind of always has looked that way. So I don't know what's changed switching between the developers. I don't know when they took over for it either, kind of thing. So I don't know, but it kind of more or less looks like it's on track to be the same kind of game it was before, which unfortunately I will say that game itself, like the gameplay of it, never looked that interesting to me. It's always been the world design and things like that. There are some like adventure elements where you go around, you can talk to characters and things like that. They do it uses like live 2D character models in like 3D spaces in a way that reminds me a lot of like Lost Dimensions, where it like zooms in on characters and then they like start animating a little bit when they get close enough. I went back and looked at Lost Dimensions recently, and like how that's handled is actually significantly worse than I thought it was, where basically they have like a low resolution version of the portrait that they kind of move over to, and the transition from that low resolution to the higher resolution one is pretty rough. But it's kind of interesting to think about the fact that like Lost Dimensions used live 2D kind of before a lot of, you know, console games started utilizing it pretty significantly. So now a lot of games look like that in terms of having the character models move around. The only difference is that Lost Dimensions looks significantly worse than most modern games. Lost Dimensions is a very cool game, though. I think I talked about it on a podcast a long time ago. If I can find it fairly easily, I'll link it here, because I think it is like a really fun game. But I did stream the whole game if you are interested in watching streams as well. That was before people really came to the stream, so it's a lot of me just sitting there talking to myself during them. So yeah. And then the last game I want to talk about is Betia, Fluent English Adventure. And this game, okay, I might end up importing this game. This is a game about learning English. However, it does it in a very like Ring Fit kind of way, where they have an RPG and then you say English phrases and choose English words out of the game to basically go through boss fights and things like that and progress in the game. And a lot of the NPCs will talk to you in English. And it looks really cool, and I kind of like the idea. It reminds me a little bit of Homeland on the GameCube visually. It's not quite like exactly like that, but it reminds me of that, like kind of like cute chibi world kind of thing. And I really like the look of it. And you know, I don't personally need to learn any more English at this point in my life, I don't think, or at least I probably won't learn any more English at this point in my life. You know, but I think it'd be like a really cool thing to sit down and try. The funny thing is that like the hardest part will probably be trying to figure out what they're asking me to say in English, in response to like Japanese words and things like that. So, it is a full price Switch retail game. And in the trailer they showed, it has like a girl using like a almost like what is it called, like Joy something, the karaoke microphone that came with a lot of Nintendo systems. I forget what it is, but there's like a bunch of like karaoke things, or I think since the Wii there's been like these karaoke games that come out on home consoles in Japan that we don't get over here. And it was that on like a stand kind of thing, which looked kind of weird. It was like this little girl that's like in the living room playing, and there's just like a mic stand in front of her, and she's just talking into it while she has the like Switch controller in her hands. And then they have like the mom in the background, and the mom's like sitting there stirring something, and it zooms in on her slightly, and she's just like nodding. She's like, yeah, Yeah, she's learning English. It looks so weird, but it's kind of fun. But I love the look of the game, and I love the idea of the game, and I want to maybe give it a shot. So I think it comes out in April. So I might look to see how much it like shows up on Play Asia with. Highly doubt it's ever going to get localized, given it's a game about learning English. So I doubt they're going to bother, figuring out how that'll work. Maybe they'll transition it to be how to learn Japanese in video games. But I kind of highly doubt that. So I think I will be checking out Betia though. The cover art for this week's YouTube is probably going to be the art for the game. But I'll link the website and the trailer in the description. So if you are interested in hearing more or seeing more about Betia, it will be there. So anyways, that's it for this week. Thanks for coming. OneControlPort.com is the website. Like I said earlier, the Sword of Betia community review archive is going to go up on the website here shortly on Wednesday. The week after that, I have not planned anything yet, but if I get the Pokemon channel video done, then I'll probably put it out that next week. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I'm still trying to figure things out. So I'll update you as things go along, though. As I mentioned earlier, the panel I did at LvlUpExpo is on the YouTube channel, so go check that out if you have not done that. And then we'll still be playing Evergrace this week, trying to get through Charlene's story. I think we have at least 2 more Evergrace streams coming up here. And then from there, we're going to switch over. My hope is that the next stream is going to be like a university disc stream. We're going to go through like a Dojin University disc I got from Comic Cat. Just check out a lot of different things on that disc, essentially. And then maybe also like sometimes they include like websites on there. We can poke around their websites, see if we can figure out who made what kind of thing. It'll be kind of a fun little adventure. It's going to be a lot more casual kind of thing probably than the usual videos or streams. And then after that, Mr. T recommended Pac-Man World 2. And I was like, that's not a bad idea. I wouldn't mind playing Pac-Man World 2 on stream. So I think at the moment, short-term plan is that we'll play Pac-Man World 2. And then go from there. So that's the current stream plans. But Evergrace again this week, Thursdays at 7 p.m. Pacific time, if you want to check that out. Anyways, that's gonna be it though. Thank you again for coming. Again, if you are part of the Patreon, thank you again for supporting me. I'll be trying to get some content up here for that specifically here shortly, but I gotta kind of figure that stuff out in real time here. I don't want to just give you guys article ratings nonstop. So yeah. But yeah, hope you have a great week. Bye.